What is indisputable now is this. The Biden plan is working. The Biden plan produces results, and the Biden plan is moving the country forward. We just have to remember who we are. You've heard me say it before. We're the United States of America. There's not a single thing, nothing beyond our capacity when we do it together.
President Biden reminding Americans just how far we have come moving forward with our economy, making our way out of the pandemic, and most notably away from the country led by arguably the most divisive president in our country's history, ending today's speech touting a line prevalent through his campaign. We do it together. In President Biden's inaugural address, he made it clear that that was his mission. To do this, quote, restore the soul and secure the future of America. It requires so much more than words and requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy, unity. The New York Times' David Brooks writes in a new op-ed, Biden's plan, which seemed improbable and impossible just last year, is working. Right, says, quote, if Joe Biden stands for one idea, it is that our system can work. We live in a big, diverse country, but good leaders can bring people together across differences to do big things. In essence, Biden is defending liberal democracy and the notion that you can't govern a nation based on the premise that the other half of the country is irredeemably awful. After Biden was elected, the two-track pattern was still going strong. The circus realm gave us the horror of January 6th, but the dull governing part of America carried on. The Biden administration has moved to separate government from the culture wars. It has shifted power away from the Green New Deal and Freedom Caucus show horses and lodged it with the congressional workhorses, people like Republican Rob Portman and Democrat Mark Warner, who are in no danger of becoming social media stars. American politics is in god-awful shape, but we're seeing a reasonably successful attempt to build it back better. We're back with John Meacham, who we should mention, as he already mentioned, occasionally advises President Biden, and Mark McKinnon is here as well. I mean, John Meacham, David Brooks arrives at almost the exact conclusion that you sort of displayed for us about what he was trying to do. How do you sustain that?
Yeah. It's the great question facing the Republic. And I mean, and I don't, that's, again, not a joke. That's it. I mean, the Biden view, as David put it there, is that perpetual warfare is not a sustainable governing strategy. And I understand why a lot of people find that to be a vision that is incommensurate with the reality on the Republican side. One of the problems we have in this country, and it could possibly be a fatal one, is that we don't have two functioning parties. This is not the both sidesism is one of our besetting sins. It's not true. I get into arguments with conservative friends a lot when they say, well, what are, the Capitol, but what about Portland? Or what about? Well, one party created and sustained a lie that led to the most direct violent assault on democracy since the Civil War. And that was not the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party could go crazy, but it's going to have to be tonight. Because what's going on with the left part of the conversation is that Senator Sanders and Senator Warren and whoever you want to mention are having a coherent conversation about American life and policy. It may be farther to the left and to the progressive side. It may overemphasize the role of the state in the marketplace than people like. But that's a coherent point of view. Anarchy is not a coherent governing strategy. Weaponizing narcissism for a demagogue in Florida or New Jersey or wherever he is not a sustainable governing strategy. The incumbent president, is making a bet that he can take that 81 million people who voted for him, grow that number by governing in as sensible a way as possible. Will it work? I don't know, but I pray it does.
We all should, honestly. Mark McKinnon, John Meacham said a lot of important things there, but I think as someone who tries to navigate this every day aggressively, there are not two sides in American politics. as he said, there are not two parties both working with different ideas for how to do it, but toward the strengthening of our democracy. One is literally, in terms of its numbers, as we've been discussing, one of the largest anti-democratic movements in the world. And I wonder what you think in terms of how they're covered. I mean, David Brooks makes this great point about workhorses, and he puts some workhorses in the column because they're working on the Biden agenda. But people like Rob Portman were some of the most disappointing people. I mentioned him before. He knew better in terms of what was going on. So the fact that there is no Republican Party in terms of ideas or agenda or even valuing the democracy is of their own making. What do you think they do over the Biden presidency?
It's tough to watch. The party's clawed its way to the bottom, and I feel like I'm out on an island. But to sort of go back on your points and Brooks's points as well. I mean, it's just so comforting and reassuring and lucky for the country that Joe Biden was elected. First of all, and I'm not sure that any other nominee would have given the outcome, but also just the tone and the kind of just temperament of the administration and Biden is just what we need right now. He's more like a doctor than a president. It's like he's just putting a thermometer in her mouth and saying, all right, let's just lower the temperature here. My dad, hated people who bragged and danced around to tout their victories. And he had a saying, which was, if you score a touchdown, don't dance in the end zone, act like you've been there before, which is kind of like what Biden's been doing, which is such a contrast to Donald Trump, who would dance in the end zone on every play, whether he scored or not. So I just think this measured tone is just what America needs right now. And by the way, it's the key that I think Biden is doing and also discovering, too, is you just can't overpromise, and you have to be prepared for one step forward, two steps back. This is not going to happen quickly or overnight. It's going to be a long slog, but I think we got the right guy at the tiller.